Like many great American stories, this one begins in a log cabin. Amber Brunson was a man who possessed a keen mind and a certain mechanical genius. A man who was creative, insightful, and driven, but had little formal education. A man who built innovative products and a company that would be recognized around the world. He was an inventor, and his unique talents would be woven throughout the unprecedented technological developments of the 20th century. He would see his products help build airplanes, rockets, and submarines, and contribute to putting a man on the moon. Amber Brunson would be invited to Washington, D.C. to consult with the president, and he would travel the world to help his customers, studying their challenges firsthand and providing guidance and technological insight. He would bring his family into the business, and through thick and thin, his son and grandson would carry forward Amber Brunson's obsession with product quality, customer service, and integrity. This is the story of Brunson Instrument Company. Amber Nelson Brunson was born the seventh of 9 children on October 22, 1905, outside of tiny Leebeck, Missouri. Amber's birth came 2 years after the large family arrived by covered wagon from Illinois.
He had extremely poor beginnings, literally born in a one-room log cabin.
An independent boy with a creative mind and hands that loved to tinker, Amber Brunson dropped out of school at a very young age to hunt and work to support his family.
Mother said the 3rd grade, he said the 5th grade, so I don't know. Somewhere in there he left school.
Grandpa Brunson, he you know, when you think about it, with so little education, it's amazing what he did.
Young Amber was curious, creative, and very active. His energetic nature would be part of his legacy.
He was a very creative person. The creative juices were flowing all the time.
Bless his heart, and look what he did. I sometimes think that an education might have taken all that creativity out of him.
So, you know, Amber had almost a single layer of focus.
He just had a lot of drive and said, well, let's try that. Let's do this. Let's make something happen.
In the spring of 1922, young Amber Brunson was ready to assert his independence. At age 16, he set out with a friend by bicycle on the 120-mile journey north to Kansas City.
My dad decided his life could be better spent in the big city and felt his abilities included better things than following a mule down a furrow all day. Gene Brunson.
My grandfather came to Kansas City when he was 16 years old and promptly got fired from his first 2 jobs.
I lied about my age to get the first job, and when they found out I was only 16 instead of 21, they canned me. That second job I lost because I spoke my mind to the boss. Amber Brunson.
His next job would stick, working for the surveying instrument dealer Oswald Greiner. The year was 1923, and Brunson was tasked with creating blueprints for $8.50 per week. He had higher ambitions, and despite his lack of education, earned admission to the Junior College of Kansas City, where he took courses 3 nights a week for 4 hours a night in algebra, geometry, trigonometry, and machine shop. On December 23, 1925, having just turned 20, Amber Brunson married Beulah Ziegenhorn in Independence, Missouri. The young couple bought a modest house on Spring Street and hoped to start a family right away. At work, even though Brunson had been hired to create blueprints, it became clear that he was drawn to the hands-on mechanical work, repairing instruments in the shop. It also became clear that he was extremely talented.
And when Mr. Greiner was out, he would go in where they were repairing instruments, and they would teach him how to do it.
I got to the point where I could repair all the instruments, even adjust them. Amber Brunson.
Greiner thought that he was learning too much about his trade, and Greiner felt a little threatened.
So when Mr. Griner found out, he wanted him to sign a 10-year contract or he'd fire him.
Something about you will work for me for 10 years and you won't go to work for anybody else and whatever. So my grandfather said, no, I'm not going to sign that.
When Brunson refused to sign, Griner fired him over the holidays in 1926. He had just turned 21 years old and had been married for 1 year. Amber Brunson needed to find a business partner who believed in his talents.
But he knew our hard times were. And I remember he come up here and him and I was out fishing one time. And he said, you know, Carl, I come up here to get a job. And he said, I couldn't find one. He said, so I made one. And he started his company.
I went down to the Gallup Map Company, and Mr. Gallup and I discussed the pros and cons of going into business together in the repair business. Amber Brunson.
He made a deal with Mr. Gallup that he could have some space in the back to have a surveying instrument repair company.
His first facilities were a simple lathe and a drill press in a room 9 foot square, bought in part with a $500 mortgage on his home. Gene Brunson.
Mr. Gallup furnished all the electricity and space, sales work and bookkeeping, and sent me to school, and paid for that. I paid him back over 6 years' time. Amber Brunson.
And he was grateful to Mr. Gallup until the day he died for that opportunity.
I wrote my first invoice for 60 cents, repairing a surveyor's tape, on November the 27th, 1927. Amber Brunson.
And to all who saw Amber Brunson work, back then and for many years to come, his natural mechanical abilities and diligence left a powerful impression.
Mr. Brunson was very mechanically minded. He could think things and see it, you know, and the working of it.
I don't know how he knew what he knew. He had an inherent understanding of mechanics. He obviously didn't have enough of an education at all to even remotely get a professional engineer's license, but they gave him one.
Brunson's skill and ingenuity enabled him to develop shortcuts and improvise on equipment. His first-class repairs, always guaranteed, and prompt deliveries, as promised, soon built up a fine reputation throughout the area. W.L. Eakey.
He was kind of like Thomas Edison in my estimation, just extremely determined to get a positive result, and would just keep trying and trying and trying until he did.
On my first job with Kansas City Southern Railways, I asked Ray Henry if he had any instruments to repair. So he gave me an old Dietzgen Y level that had been hit by a railroad train, and it was really smashed up. I gave him a price on this, and it took me about 2 months to straighten it up and make new parts and put it in first-class condition, and I painted it and took it back over there, and his people thought it was a brand new instrument. I realized that at the time that he gave me this job, that he was pulling my leg, because he didn't think I had the qualifications to do that job. But I didn't say anything, so just went ahead and did the job, and the result was that he gave me over $10,000 worth of business for the next 5 years. Amber Brunson.
Amber and Beulah Brunson welcomed son Gene into the family on August 14, 1928. With a new mouth to feed and a new business to grow, Amber Brunson worked hard both to learn his new trade and keep his customers happy.
He was always a hard worker, but I think early on, especially at the building on Walnut, he told me that he would sometimes stay all night in his office and just sleep on his couch for a few hours and then going back out to work.
He really wanted to grow and have a company and do a good job at everything he did.
Two cataclysmic events of the 1930s, the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression, would impact Brunson's surveying equipment repair business.
Nobody had any money. Nobody wanted to buy new surveying instruments. So they all wanted to repair their old ones. And he had a route that he would run in Missouri, part of Kansas, where he would go around and collect instruments, take them back, repair them, and then deliver them the next time he was out. In the process, he saw what he thought were design flaws that would allow the instrument to suffer.
As dust storms swept across the plains in 1934, many farms failed and were sold off, keeping surveyors busy reestablishing property lines obscured by the shifting sands. Dust Bowl conditions would continue for years to come, and in turn would take their toll on the surveyors' equipment.
Just an ordinary dust storm would wear the spindles out. I just thought that there ought to be a better way to seal it. Amber Brunson.
So he figured out, oh, I bet I could design a base for an instrument that doesn't do that, a dust-proof base.
Amber Brunson worked diligently to design, build, and refine the new dust-proof spindle. Then he turned to trusted local customers and asked them to test the product.
The instrument proved to be satisfactory in all tests. It operated with ease and precision. Black & Veatch.
From the construction, your spindle should outlast anything of the older design by many years. Burns and McDonnell.
I wish to recommend this device most highly to the engineering industry. TWA.
That was his first foray into actually building something of a surveying instrument. And it worked, and it was great. And he retrofitted a lot of instruments with his new base. It was his first patent, our first patent, 1939.
But more than a new product was created. Brunson Instrument had developed a critical process, carefully examining a customer's challenge, understanding the application in their environment, and then designing, testing, and producing equipment that exceeds the customer's needs.
My grandfather had this just absolute dedication to customer satisfaction.
Our customer orientation really is a key part of who we are. It's the soul of Brunson.
In 1939, in the face of expansionist threats from fascist Europe, President Franklin Roosevelt ordered a new expedition to the South Pole to be led by the noted explorer Rear Admiral Richard Byrd. The objective was establishing a base in Antarctica called Little America.
I wrote Admiral Byrd and asked him if he would like to have an instrument that wouldn't freeze up at the South Pole. Amber Brunson.
I know that he did a lot of testing. I'm sure he was sticking that thing in a freezer and then pulling it out and see what was binding.
I made up 4 of my spindles and put them on a Gurley Transit and tested them down to about 65 below zero. Amber Brunson.
Telegram from Mr. A. N. Brunson Instrument Company. The Gurley Transit, fitted with the Brunson ball bearing head, which you made available to the U.S. Antarctic Service, is operating splendidly and serving us well. At extreme low temperatures, other instruments bound, but yours always moved freely, thanks to your careful pre-checking. Admiral Byrd joins me in expressing thanks for the use of the instrument and your generous interest in our work.
On the phone, the man told me that it got down to 54 below zero. Amber Brunson.
You're operating at those temperatures and you actually get affirmation that yours was the only one that worked. It speaks volumes to the quality of the product that you're putting out the door.
And this is kind of my little reminder that of his, obsession with quality. And that really carries through. It carries through our entire culture.
The company expanded rapidly with the introduction of the new dust-proof spindle. As the employee headcount grew to meet demand, Brunson moved into his own factory in 1942, a 3-story building at 1405 Walnut Street in downtown Kansas City. But Amber Brunson's obsession with quality would soon take the company to a new frontier, well beyond surveying instruments. Following the end of World War II, opportunity knocked once again for Brunson Instrument. As the post-war building boom pushed demand for new roads and home construction, surveyors looked to Brunson.
At that time, we were producing an entire line of surveying instruments. You know, builder's levels and Y levels and dumpy levels and transits and builder's transits, and we even built tripods. We made everything for the surveyor.
If you were a surveyor, you had to have a Brunson instrument because that was the measure of quality for that device.
With the surveying instrument business humming, Amber Brunson would soon step up and help guide a revolution in precision manufacturing. It all started in 1948 when a customer from Wichita, Kansas asked him to come down and visit their busy factory. The customer was Boeing, and they were transitioning from propeller aircraft to jets, and the brand new B-47 Stratojet bomber was in test flights.
Working closely with Boeing at Wichita, the people in the shop there began to express a desire for a way to do a better job of measuring. Amber Brunson.
The reason was simple. Jet aircraft flew significantly faster than their propeller-driven predecessors. And with increasing airspeed came increasing stress in the airframe. Jets would require tighter tolerances in manufacturing and assembly. But the tools were not precise enough for jet aircraft manufacturing. In the tense Cold War environment, U.S. aircraft companies looked to Amber Brunson to help bring the principles of optical tooling to their assembly lines. The Brunson team worked quickly to adapt the existing line of surveying equipment for this critical new application. Word soon came back from Wichita, however, that the new equipment was not precise enough.
So after my first attempt fell flat, I redesigned the entire instrument line, making a new standard, new everything, until I came up with an instrument sturdy enough to do the job and with sufficient adjustments down to the required 1 second or less accuracy. Amber Brunson.
The new line of Brunson optical tooling equipment met the manufacturer's need for measurement precision, and the aircraft soon went into mass production. More than 2,000 B-47s would be built for the Air Force by 1956, with the assistance of Brunson Instruments' new optical tooling equipment.
Mr. Brunson to optical tooling was like Bell was to the telephone or Edison to the light bulb, you know. He really developed it.
Like I say, the vision to produce such a product, I think was, just a tremendous asset.
This was the way to get extreme accuracy in an industrial setting when you're building something big.
Most of our development of optical tooling has been through the request of a group of people throughout the United States at Grumman, McDonnell Aircraft, Boeing, North American, Ford, Martin, and Convair. Amber Brunson.
Basically anything that flew was going to have an involvement with our products. And that meant satellites, aircraft, military aircraft, civilian aircraft, rockets, you name it.
Gene Brunson had grown up in and around his father's business, getting permission at age 14 to work at the company after school and on vacations. An aviation machinist in the post-war Navy, Gene was discharged in 1949, then went on to college studying industrial management at the University of Kansas. While at KU, he married Madeline Cato in 1951. Gene would earn his bachelor's degree in 1954 and then rejoin the family business in the fall of that year. With Brunson's new line of optical tooling equipment in high demand, this was a time of tremendous growth and challenge for the company. Gene quickly set out to guide the fast-paced, occasionally chaotic production process.
Gene was a very stabilizing force at that time. The overall business functions of Brunson really needed help. And this is where Gene was very instrumental in starting to smooth those things out.
He managed in a different way than his dad did, for sure.
As Brunson's new line of optical tooling products grew to accommodate the needs of precision manufacturing customers, the factory on Walnut Street hummed. But Amber Brunson faced a new challenge.
When he got into the really precise industrial measurement world, the things that they were doing were such a level above the accuracy that had been required previously that they found out the building was shaking.
It's such delicate machinery that they build. So they had to do some of the work on Sundays because there was less traffic and less, tremor.
Now, this isn't anything that you could detect with your feet or experience in any way unless you were trying to get certain things done, certain processes completed, certain calibrations done on a real precision instrument. Then it became a problem.
I got the idea that if there was a solid place, we could be fine. We needed to think of a rock or a boulder, and this was the nearest rock or boulder I could find. Amber Brunson.
I don't know where he came up with this idea, but he decided that he was going to dig a hole in the ground and move into it.
In 1949, Brunson bought 10 acres of hilly land off of 23rd Street at the eastern edge of Kansas City. He was less interested in what was on top of the hill than what was underneath, an extremely thick layer of solid Bethany Falls limestone exposed in a bluff on the south side of the hill. Trusting his engineering skills, he had great faith in his ability to build a factory underground. No one had ever done this before in Kansas City.
Underground manufacturing was such a new venture that the local bank had no precedent on which to base their interest rates. So, as a result, they would have nothing to do with the finance of such an outlandish venture. So my father and his brother, as construction foremen, prepared to move ahead on their own. Gene Brunson.
Fire the hole!
Blasting began in 1954. This was during a period of high demand for limestone, an essential ingredient for mixing concrete. With post-war road building and suburban development in full swing, the creation of the underground factory could proceed whenever there was an order for more limestone.
A full-fledged quarrying operation was begun with drilling rigs, blasting, and rock crushers set up on the site. It was a pull-yourself-up-by-your-bootstraps situation. Operations went forward as long as the mining money held out. When the money was gone, operations stopped. Gene Brunson.
At the time, he asked the state, geological engineers, how do I know how much pillar to leave for the roof support? And they said, well, we don't know. So he ended up just using his gut instinct. And it turns out we've been told that he overdid it, so it's safer than it had to be.
The business community joined the banking community in expressing derisive skepticism about the project. It was called Brunson's Folly, but Amber Brunson ignored the mockery and continued to follow his vision. The mining and the finishing work on the underground facility took 5 years.
He had the idea of going out and getting on solid rock, and that's what he did. And there's no rumbling there, I'll tell you that.
On Friday, February 26, 1960, the underground installation was ready. The moving job began.
Just as the company began moving to the new underground factory, Brunson asked his chief engineer, Wayne Alto, to carefully transport the company's critical product blueprints to the new offices in the cave. 2 days later, disaster struck.
We got a call from Grandma Brunson that the plant was on fire. So, of course, we left immediately and went downtown.
I went down there, came around the corner. There she is, blazing through the roof. They put it out, but by the time it burned through, the whole first and second floor were gone. Amber Brunson.
That was some night, I'll tell you. So cold, bitterly cold. They decided that the fire was started by an electrical ignition for the wires coming into the plant.
$85,000 worth of finished instruments were ready to ship. These were a total loss. It was literally weeks before we could get through the ice to even see how completely the place was destroyed. Gene Brunson.
2 lucky breaks helped keep the company afloat.
The fact that the chief engineer had moved all of the drawings is the only reason we're still in business. Because if that had not happened, we would have lost all of our designs, all of our intellectual property, and I think the damage would have just been we would have been starting at scratch again.
The second stroke of good luck, some of the company's machines actually survived both the fire and the water from the firefighters' hoses.
The really big, heavy equipment, which was located in the basement, firemen pumped so much water into the building that the basement completely filled up with water.
It was kind of miraculous because when they pumped the water out, the oil settled on the machinery downstairs.
Which saved them. But they brought it over here. They cleaned all that stuff up and refurbished it and brought, and a lot of that equipment came over to the cave.
We stayed in business. He brought everybody back to work. I don't think anybody hardly missed very few hours.
A new decade, the 1960s, beckoned, and there were customer orders to fill. Alongside his son Gene, Amber Brunson worked tirelessly to set up the unique underground factory.
He got a lot of flack from the community. In fact, I think there was a newspaper article when it was all done that said something about Brunson's folly isn't so stupid anymore.
Amber Brunson's vision has been validated further. Today, the Kansas City area, surrounded by deposits of Bethany Falls limestone, ranks first worldwide in the use of underground space. Young Dighton Brunson would soon become a recognized face around the new underground facility. And the third generation of the Brunson boys found their family's workplace something of a playground.
I remember riding on the Caterpillar with my Uncle Claude when I was about 4 or 5, and they were picking up rocks and moving them around, and it was, all I remember is it was insanely loud. You know, my brother and I, we'd come down and roller skate around at what was at that time a flat floor. The supervisors had electric carts, you know, so we'd have electric cart races, and I can remember my dad taking tours of people through, and it was a long time before I really understood what it is they were making here. I didn't quite grasp it. It was kind of mysterious.
The 1960s saw Gene Brunson come into his own. As the company's heir apparent, he was providing the critical organizational backbone behind his father's creative ventures.
Because in the mid-1960s, this company was a real going concern. I mean, it had marketing, it had sales, they had their own printing press where they would print their own sales collateral. They had product design and engineering department and manufacturing. They had it all cooking.
Brunson's sales, which were under $200,000 in 1946, exceeded $2 million by 1964. The company was also expanding geographically. The 1950s had seen Brunson open survey equipment and sales offices in Denver and Minneapolis, with Los Angeles and Mountain View, California joining in the 1960s. Brunson had become a model small business, delivering optical tooling products to a wide range of customers, well beyond aviation and aerospace. In August of 1964, a telegram was delivered to Amber Brunson from the President of the United States. "I would be pleased if you would join me at the White House," read the telegram. "An exchange of views with you and other outstanding leaders of our country is, I believe, important and desirable." Signed, Lyndon B. Johnson. Amber Brunson wired back right away. Of course he would attend. Joining a group of small business leaders for the meeting, the visit to the White House would be a crowning moment in Amber Brunson's career. It started with a backache. It was persistent. Then the pain moved to Gene Brunson's stomach.
His age would tell you that, oh well, this will go away, or this is, something other than something very serious.
They did surgery to see what was there, and then they just had to close him back up. So it was downhill from then on.
All the grown-ups who are supposed to be in charge of the world can't fix this, and the doctors can't fix this, and so something is really wrong. But it never, for whatever stupid reason, it never dawned on me he would actually die.
Well, it was you might say it was really hard.
I'm sure he would have made this business very profitable. I'm sure he would have done a good job here.
Well, Gene is one of those people that is always thinking of the other person, how they feel, what they feel. That he's a shining example of how God wants us to live our lives here on earth.
I think my grandfather never told me this or led me to believe this, but I can't help but think that this was a tremendous emotional blow for him. He wanted to pass the company to his son, and now that wasn't going to happen.
Gene Brunson died of complications from abdominal cancer on March 22, 1966, at the age of 37.
After Gene passed away, and Amber and his 2 or 3 cohorts, they just lacked a real sense of healthy direction.
Then things started to just kind of get a lot more casual.
The company still had a fantastic reputation of quality, of service, etc.
It became a different company, less interested in growth, just more interested in solving customers' problems.
Amber Brunson would solve a lot of customers' problems in this era, providing training and optical tooling at steel mills, shipbuilding operations, and factories across the country and around the world. He would fly when he could, but would often pack up with his wife Beulah and hit the road in his Brunson mobile unit, a Winnebago with a trailer that would become a portable metrology classroom. Working summers at his grandfather's company since the age of 16, Dighton Brunson returned to stay after graduating from the University of Missouri with a master's in electrical engineering in December of 1979. As the 1980s began, metrology was becoming computerized. Early on, Dighton spotted numerous vulnerabilities in the computer programming of a popular product, Kern's electronic coordinate determination system. Dighton took a list of the Kern product's flaws to the boss.
So we went to my grandfather. I remember we were sitting in his office and we were explaining this, and he said, "Can we build one of our own?" And now I've got a fresh electrical engineering degree, so I'm thinking, yeah, we can build our own. So he said, "All right, go do it."
It was a natural progression for us, if you will, to take that step into 3D metrology.
Dighton set out to design a new product that would do a better job of addressing the customer's evolving requirements in 3D metrology and would be more user-friendly than the competitor systems. It would be called BETS, short for Brunson Electronic Triangulation System.
I led a little team of about 4 or 5 people who made this product, and they all had different jobs.
They'd go hole up in hotel rooms for days on end, go hide and write code and eat Cheetos or whatever it was they were eating, and then bring that back. We'd do some testing.
I'd come in and realizing that we got to buy a $15,000 something or other to make this project work, and I'd say, "Grandpa, we gotta we need one of these things to make this work, and it's like $15,000. And he's, buy it, you know, just not even think twice, just buy it, get it, do it.
The BETS system was bench tested at Hughes Aircraft in San Diego early in 1987. It was deemed ready for market.
It was really gratifying because you've spent all this time building something, and now actually somebody wants to pay for it and use it. And that's a fantastic feeling.
As we developed the BETS system, it began to take off in industry, and one of the accounts that we had a lot of work with was Goodyear.
Goodyear approached Brunson and asked for a customized BETS system with software adapted to Goodyear's unique tire production needs.
The guy from Goodyear later told us that he had asked the other guys, the other competitors, the same question. Can you make it do this? Will you make it do this? And he came to us, and we were the only ones that said yes. So we worked ourselves to death to make it do what he wanted to do. And poof, they buy, I don't know how many of these things.
Like his grandfather before him, Dighton found a way to solve the customer's unique challenges, listening carefully and adapting the product. This is a legacy of Brunson Instrument Company and continues to this day. Amber Brunson, who had worked for 60 years at the company, was still his energetic self, but by the mid-1980s became focused on entrepreneurial projects outside the company. He wrote a friend in 1985.
The Brunson instrument business is still good. When I go, I will turn it over to the younger generation. That's liable to take a couple of years. Mrs. Brunson says I'm nuts starting a new business at 80 years of age, but my health is still good. Amber Brunson.
I mean, he was just this creative force that wouldn't quit.
And he was building fish ponds and using a bulldozer. And of course he had help doing all that, but he didn't need to be on the bulldozer.
And he built 2 homes and a fish hatchery, and he dug like 40 ponds and a 1,100-foot deep well, and he connected all these ponds with plumbing.
And the doctor told him not to, but he still did, and so we think that's what caused, you know, maybe the heart attack.
He was just having a blast. He came in one day from being on his Caterpillar, sat down on the sofa and died, which is the way to do it. It's the way to do your life, I think.
230 people signed the guest book at Amber Brunson's funeral, but the actual number of attendees was much higher. Dighton Brunson wrote a moving eulogy in which he recounted a conversation he once had with his grandfather.
Well, we had this little exchange one time about bumblebees, and I said that scientists had studied, at that time, scientists had studied the bumblebee, and they decided that they didn't understand how the bumblebee could actually fly, because the aerodynamics of the wings and the weight and of whatever, just the bumblebee shouldn't be able to fly, but it does. And he said, well, do you know why the bumblebee is able to fly? Why is that? Because he doesn't know he can't. And I thought that's really a good allegory for his whole life, because he was a very bright guy. He was very persistent, and he always believed that anything was possible.
Brunson Instrument was without a leader, and Amber Brunson's death raised tough choices about the company's future. Dighton, at age 33, was the only member of the family still working at the company. The decision fell to him about how Brunson Instrument would proceed.
I felt like it was my responsibility to do this. I felt like I really didn't have any other option that was any good.
As that transition took place, I think those were learning days for all of us, Dighton specifically.
I felt a huge responsibility for not killing my grandfather's company. This was his legacy. This was a huge opportunity, and I didn't want to be the one that is not going down on my watch.
Just as he took over his grandfather's company, Dighton reckoned with the first of many financial struggles. He made the difficult decision in 1991 to sell off all the company's surveying, instrument repair, and sales offices, which had served their respective regions for decades. The company was instantly in the black, but it would not last.
And I remember going to Boeing in Seattle about that time and sitting across the desk from the guys who had been buying hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of our product. And they looked at me and they said, "Mr. Brunson, we like your product. We don't have anything against your product. We're not going to buy any more of it, and you need to know that." So this was a shock.
They were moving to the 3D world with laser trackers, and they did not see Brunson Instruments being in their future.
Pretty scary message to get at that time. And being relatively new in the position, I can't imagine what was going through Dighton's mind on that.
When that all disappeared, we did not have work for those folks to do. It was a very difficult time.
In the face of losing the Boeing business, Dighton Brunson found his leadership tested, with the company's sales plummeting from $10 million in 1990 to $3 million in 1995. He clearly saw the potential for the end of Brunson Instrument Company.
We needed to stop the bleeding. I mean, we had been knocked down in the ring, and they just counted to 10, and so we're not thinking of, you know, winning a championship. We're thinking of how to stay alive.
Dighton really did a pretty good job of trying not to freak everybody out. I think he managed that pretty well. I can't imagine the anxiety there had to be for him on that.
So it was the perfect storm for chaos and mayhem. We have a 33-year-old kid who doesn't know how to manage. We have both major markets going to hell at the same time. So there was a lot to learn, and there was a lot to fix.
In spite of the stress and uncertainty of the time, Boeing's decision shed light on what needed to change at Brunson. While the challenge was threatening, Dighton treated it as an opportunity for change.
I should not have been surprised when I went to Boeing and they said, "We no longer want to use your products." That came as a shock. That should not have been a shock. If we had a proper sales and marketing effort at the time, it wouldn't have been a shock. We would have known what the customers were doing. We would have known what direction they were going.
The question came up, how are we going to continue to be a part of this metrology environment? And how are we going to continue to be a force with our customers?
But what started happening was that all these other technologies, the laser trackers, the laser radars, the photogrammetry systems, the people who were building those products and using those products started to call us and ask us if we had certain accessories, stands, targeting artifacts, scale bars that they could use with that product.
So we kept that same attitude, that same mentality to say, we want to help you solve your problems. And that was where we began to learn about other components that we could manufacture to support that process.
So we said, okay, we're going to follow these new guys. If you can't beat them, join them. You know, they came in and whooped us with their new technology, so okay, we'll turn around and support that. We'll go in that direction.
In the 1990s, the challenges evolved as Dighton continued to learn more about the developing needs of Brunson's customers.
I just kept banging my head against the wall, and it took 10 years. Guess what? It took 10 years before things were going in a productive direction.
You've seen as a person that endured all of those challenges when most people would have given up. He definitely kept the faith when there were a lot of reasons not to have any faith.
We had to make this company work. It was going to work, period.
With the many fires put out from his first decade at the helm, Dighton Brunson took on the formidable task of reinvigorating his father's focus on controlling the company's manufacturing processes.
We had incredibly long lead times for a lot of our products. We couldn't get a product out on time if our life depended on it. We could not promise something to the customer and then do that.
The year was 2000, and Richard Powell had just joined the company as accounting manager. Dighton soon looked to expand his responsibilities and asked Richard to analyze and improve the manufacturing process.
Factory was spread out and everybody made parts for everything, and whatever the big priority was is where all the attention was.
And it's all so complex that it never executes like it ought to.
And everybody kind of had their own little kingdom.
Dighton's effort was to get a team concept to where everybody was respectful of one another, of how they did things, when they did things.
And we found some consultants who taught us about the theory of constraints.
Spurred by Richard, the theory of constraints took hold throughout the company.
When we started all that, some of our heavy tripods had lead times of 3 months, and then they were late. When we went to the theory of constraints concept and broke it into a business unit, that 12 weeks became 4 days.
With this success, leadership looked to raise the bar. By 2008, Brunson Instrument had attained the coveted ISO 9001 certification, an outside validation of what employees had already seen firsthand: better control of the production process.
I'm very grateful for the folks that we have. We have a bunch of people, especially in the factory, that are just obsessed with precision and quality. That's the type of company we are, and that's the type of people we need. It is so wonderful to work with a group of people who work together and want to make the company a success.
I have always appreciated Dighton's just commitment to the company. He wants this to survive him. He wants this to live beyond him and do more than even he has done with it.
I don't know if it came from the years with his granddad. Part of it's just the person he is, but has always had an incredible drive to maintain the company, to see it grow and to see it perpetuated. This is his family.
How do we make this little company stand on its own legs till the end of time? Because I wasn't interested. I mean, I did not want to sell the company. I wanted our little company legacy to be our little company. I wanted it to say Brunson Instrument on the door, and I wanted it to last for a good long time.
The answer came in the form of the Employee Stock Ownership Plan, or ESOP, established by Amber Brunson in 1985. With a few hard-earned changes to the ESOP, Dighton could envision a future where Brunson's employees could own the company.
Using the ESOP, it will perpetuate the company and the ethics, the morals, the brand.
You know, the idea is that we're all owners, right? That's the concept. And so as an owner, hopefully I got more skin in the game and more interest to make this thing go.
That'll be huge going forward. So it's a great opportunity, especially for the people that are going to be here for the next 15, 20 years.
And I think we're in as good a place as we've ever been because of it.
Since I've been at Brunson, when you come in the entry, there's been a portrait of Dighton's grandfather.
My mom wanted to have portraits of the 3 generations, so my grandfather, my dad, and me. And so I drug my heels and drug my heels. I mean, this went on for like 2 years. I just don't, you know, I just felt like I probably shouldn't be up there with those two guys.
It became a project to find a picture of his father. And then, of course, the bigger challenge was getting Dighton's picture.
Well, it was a year ago, Thanksgiving. We were here in this room for our annual holiday dinner. The board members and the Brunson family come in, and Richard got up to make a presentation to Mrs. Brunson, and it was a portrait of Amber Brunson, the founder, Gene Brunson, and Dighton Brunson.
It was just a great personal moment for them as a family and for us as the extended family.
Madeline was thrilled, and she was in tears, and it was such a touching moment. I don't think there was a dry eye in the house.
Just being around as long as I have, I know Dighton has worked so hard to make this a place where people can be a part of something bigger than themselves, provide a good product to market, and feel good about taking care of our customers.
And I've been in several meetings with Dighton where you can tell that it's not just his job and a place he goes to work. It's who he is and it's his history. And anytime you start talking about that history, you can see it knot up inside his throat, and you can tell that it's really in his heart.
There's a lot of I have a lot of motivation from the fact that it was my grandfather's company. It's our family company. I can't blow this. I have to make this work.